So, I want you to cast your mind back to November 22nd, 2022.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that day.
Right. Because on that specific morning, the global expected goals forecasting models, like the really advanced supercomputers, they gave the Saudi Arabia national football team a 1.2% chance of beating Argentina.
Just 1.2%. It's almost a rounding error.
Exactly. 1.2%. But then, the final whistle blew in Qatar, and it wasn't just an upset. It was a complete mathematical anomaly.
It literally broke predictive algorithms all over the world.
Yeah. I mean, you probably remember exactly where you were when Salem Al-Dawsari hit that curling strike. It was just this moment of pure, unadulterated sporting shock.
Mm-hmm. The Green Falcons didn't just beat Lionel Messi's eventual world champions, right? They snapped Argentina's 36-match unbeaten streak.
Right, which brings us to the massive, kind of twisted irony we are exploring today. Because winning the greatest game in their entire sporting history, that massive high, might have actually been the absolute worst thing that could have possibly happened to the Saudi Arabian national team.
I know it sounds incredibly counterintuitive, but, well, the data really bears it out.
Yeah.
That single match in Lusail, it essentially created this massive psychological and, frankly, tactical burden. The landscape of international football shifted dramatically under their feet the very next morning.
And they basically spent the next 4 years desperately trying to find their footing again.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's set the table for you listening. We have a towering stack of sources on the table between us today for this deep dive.
We really do. We're deep in the weeds today.
Oh, completely. We are talking proprietary technical scouting reports, deep dive tactical analyses from the Asian qualifiers, historical tournament data matrices, the latest betting odds from the global markets, and of course, the official 26-man World Cup squad announcements.
Right, the actual roster.
Right. And we're going to use all of this to figure out exactly how the Green Falcons survived an incredibly turbulent and frankly bizarre road to North America. We're setting out to decode the brand new tactical blueprint they've installed at the absolute last second.
Literally the 11th hour.
Yeah. And we'll analyze their key players and predict exactly how they match up against the heavyweights waiting for them in Group H. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because, if you look at that 2022 high, you would assume the subsequent qualification cycle would just be a victory lap, right?
Yeah, really would. You'd assume that slaying the eventual world champions gives a program this kind of invincibility aura.
Right.
But international football is just fiercely unforgiving. That Argentina win forced every subsequent opponent to take Saudi Arabia incredibly seriously.
So no more sneaking up on people.
Exactly. Teams that used to open up and attack them suddenly started playing heavily fortified defensive shapes against them. They were like, we're not going to be the next Argentina.
That makes sense.
And the Green Falcons were entirely unprepared to be the protagonists in these matches. They didn't know how to break teams down. So their qualification journey for 2026 became this agonizing three-phase ordeal that just tested every single limit of their squad depth.
Yeah, let's get into the mechanics of that struggle, because the numbers are just stark. In the second round of the Asian Football Confederation qualifiers, they didn't even win their group.
No, they didn't.
They finished behind Jordan. Wait, just wrapping your head around that? How does a team that beats Messi struggle against Jordan?
Well, it comes down to offensive inefficiency. Basically, they finished level with Jordan on 13 points, but they were relegated to second place entirely on goal difference.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Jordan had a +12, and Saudi Arabia only managed a +9. And look, while progressing from the second round is the bare minimum expectation, failing to dominate it was really the first flashing red warning light on the dashboard.
Like a canary in the coal mine.
Exactly. It foreshadowed a severe systemic inability to break down deep, organized defenses. When teams sat back against them, the Saudi midfield just lacked the creative geometry to unlock them.
And that warning light turned into an absolute blaring siren in the third round. They were drawn into Group C, paired up against regional giants like Japan and Australia.
A brutal group.
Completely. And I'm looking at the expected goals metrics from these 10 matches, and the actual output is just astonishing. 10 matches played, 7 goals scored.
It's unbelievable.
7 goals in 10 matches, and they conceded 8. So they finished third behind Japan and Australia, completely missing out on direct qualification.
Yeah, the offensive stagnation wasn't just, bad, it was structurally broken. In those 10 matches, not a single one of those 7 goals came from a recognized central striker.
Wait, really? Not one?
Not a single one. The entire attacking mechanism was failing. The midfielders were completely disconnected from the forward line. And because they finished third, they were forced into the perilous territory of the continental playoff.
Right, the sudden death phase.
Exactly. High stakes. And they were drawn into Group B alongside Iraq and Indonesia.
Which resulted in some wildly stressful football.
Oh, they barely survived. They secured this chaotic 3-2 victory against Indonesia, needing a decisive stoppage time winner just to get through that one.
Unbelievable.
And then they played out a deeply tense, highly conservative 0-0 tactical draw against Iraq.
Right.
In that match, their goalkeeper, Nawaf Al-Akidi, he actually had to make 2 point-blank reaction saves in stoppage time just to keep the dream alive.
That is way too close for comfort.
Way too close. Ultimately, both Saudi Arabia and Iraq finished level on 4 points with a +1 goal difference. The Green Falcons advanced purely by virtue of goals, scored 3 goals across the phase to Iraq's 1. It was the absolute narrowest of mathematical margins.
And, I mean, all of this on-field chaos was mirrored by intense instability in the managerial dugout, too.
Oh, it was a carousel.
Right. They started with the former Italy manager, Roberto Mancini, who couldn't get the team firing, and he was heavily criticizing the players' domestic match fitness.
Yeah, that relationship soured quickly.
So then the Federation brings back Hervé Renard, who was the charismatic architect to that famous 2022 win. The magic was clearly gone.
Long gone.
And the breaking point was just a few months ago.
Right.
March 2026. A friendly against Egypt in Riyadh.
Yeah, that match against Egypt was the tactical disaster that catalyzed everything that followed. It was a humiliating 4-0 defeat on home soil.
Ouch.
Yeah. Former national team hero Saeed Al-Awaran publicly stated it could have been 6-0 by halftime. But we really need to look at exactly how it happened. Renard was deploying a high defensive line, playing his center backs almost 40 yards from their own goal, practically near the midfield circle.
Which, I mean, is great if you are pressing the opponent high up the pitch and forcing them into bad passes.
Precisely. But the Saudi forward line wasn't pressing. They were exhausted.
Oh, I see.
So you had a situation where Egyptian midfielders like Mohamed El-Neni were receiving the ball with zero pressure on them. They're looking up and seeing this massive expanse of green grass right behind the Saudi defense.
That's a nightmare.
It is. If you don't pressure the passer, a high defensive line is just a tactical suicide pact. The Egyptian midfielders had all day to measure their passes, just dropping them perfectly over the Saudi defenders' heads for forwards like Omar Marmoush to run onto.
Just repeatedly tearing them apart with vertical transition runs.
Over and over. And following that, they lost 2-1 to Serbia, suffering from the exact same structural flaws. The friction between Renard and the Saudi Arabian Football Federation just reached an absolute boiling point.
Which leads to the most shocking decision of this entire cycle. I mean, they sack Hervé Renard a mere 50 days before their opening World Cup match.
50 days.
I need to stop you there and push back on this a little bit. You're telling me they fired the manager right before the tournament and handed the controls to Georgios Donis?
That's exactly what
I
happened.
mean, a manager who just bounces around mid-table domestic Saudi clubs, that feels less like finding a fixer and more like just waving the white flag. Why on earth would they not throw a massive contract at a high-profile European manager with Champions League pedigree?
Look, from a traditional sporting perspective, your skepticism is entirely warranted. It really looks like sheer administrative panic.
Right. Changing your manager 50 days before the World Cup is like swapping the pilot while the plane is already experiencing heavy turbulence.
It's a great analogy. But if you analyze the specific constraints of the Saudi domestic landscape, a high-profile European manager would have been an absolute disaster.
Really? Why?
Because bringing in a big name 50 days out is useless. They wouldn't have time to learn the cultural dynamics, scout the domestic league, or, build tactical trust.
Oh, right, the language barrier, all of that.
Exactly. Donis is essentially a crisis IT contractor. You don't bring him in to upgrade your software to the newest, flashiest operating system. You bring him in because the servers are literally on fire. He knows exactly where the water shutoff valve is, and he already has all the administrative passwords.
Okay, that makes sense. He knows the system intimately.
He really does. Since 2014, Donis has managed Al-Hilal, Al-Weda, Al-Fateh, and most recently, Al-Khalij. He has a decade of granular, on-the-ground experience in the Roshan Saudi League.
Wow, a decade.
Yeah. And here's the critical data point. Donis has already managed 10 of the 26 players on this exact World Cup roster at the club level.
Oh, so he completely bypasses that awkward getting-to-know-you phase.
Exactly. He can walk into that locker room on day one and instantly command respect because these players already know his training methods, his defensive expectations, and his communication style.
That's a huge advantage.
It is. I mean, he developed their star striker, Faris Al-Barrakan, at Al Fateh, helping him score 17 goals in a single season by specifically building a transition system around him. He brought young midfielder Murad Hassawi through the ranks at Al Khalij. He was hired specifically because his onboarding time was 0 seconds.
But, you don't survive a 50-day tactical overhaul just on good vibes and familiarity.
Yay.
Adonis knew he couldn't install some complex, possession-heavy Guardiola-style system in under 2 months.
No, absolutely not.
He had to be ruthlessly pragmatic. So let's look at what the structural engineer actually did to stop the roof from caving in.
Well, the shift has been night and day. He looked at the tracking data from that 4-0 destruction by Egypt and realized his center back simply lacked the recovery speed to sustain Renard's high line.
So he just scrapped it.
Completely abandoned it. He has installed a highly disciplined, compact, low-to-mid block. Depending on the opponent's attacking intensity, you will see Saudi Arabia sitting deep in either a 5-4-1 or a 4-2-3-1 defensive shape.
And when you say a low block, we are talking about keeping all 11 players firmly behind the ball, right? Just heavily congesting their own half of the pitch.
It is about extreme spatial control, specifically protecting what analysts call Zone 14.
Okay, what exactly is Zone 14? Because I see this term popping up in all the technical scouting reports we're looking at.
Yeah, it's a huge concept in modern tactics. Imagine dividing the football pitch into a 6x3 grid, creating 18 equal rectangles.
Okay, got the grid in my head.
Zone 14 is the rectangle located squarely in the middle of the pitch, immediately outside the opponent's penalty area. Statistically, it is the golden square of the pitch.
The danger zone.
Exactly. Over 70% of high-danger assists and key passes originate from this exact central location. If you control Zone 14, you neutralize the opponent's primary creative hub. So, Saudi Arabia now proactively cedes possession in the wider, less dangerous areas. They drop deep, keep their defensive lines incredibly close together horizontally and vertically. I mean, often with less than 15 yards between the starting striker and the deepest center back.
Wow, that is incredibly compact.
They completely clog Zone 14, denying any passing lanes through the middle.
So they are essentially forcing the opponent to move the ball out wide toward the touchlines, because the middle is a brick wall.
Exactly. They funnel the opposition's attacks out to the flanks, and once the ball moves to the wing, that is the trigger.
The trap.
That is where Donis deploys massed pressing traps. The fullback, the winger, and a central midfielder will suddenly collapse on the ball carrier, creating a localized 3-on-1 numerical advantage to steal possession back.
But, I mean, you can't just absorb pressure for 90 minutes and hope to win.
Right.
Once they spring that geometric trap on the wing and win the ball, what is the mechanism for actually scoring? Because looking at the tactical models, it's not a slow, patient buildup.
No, not at all. It's an explosion. It relies on lightning-fast vertical transitions. The moment possession is won, the tactical programming kicks in. There is zero slow circulation at the back involving the goalkeeper.
No passing around the back four.
None. The central playmakers are instructed to immediately look up and launch long diagonal through passes into the channels. The goal is to exploit the vast amounts of space left behind by the opponent's fullbacks, who have naturally pushed high up the pitch trying to break down the low block.
Catching them out of position.
Exactly. It is direct, it is aggressive, and it relies entirely on the sprint velocity of their wide attackers to chase down those long passes.
And we actually just saw a perfect laboratory test of this exact strategy days ago, a final warm-up friendly against Senegal.
Yes. What's fascinating here is that the 0-0 draw against Senegal in Orlando was a complete masterclass in this new blueprint.
Right, because Senegal is a top 20 FIFA-ranked nation.
Exactly. They are highly physical, incredibly dangerous, and they came into that match on an 11-game scoring streak. And Donis's low block completely neutralized them. The defensive discipline was remarkable. Not only did they break Senegal's scoring streak, but in the early stages of that match, Saudi Arabia's counterattacks were so lethal that Senegal's elite goalkeeper, Edouard Mendy, had to make 3 point-blank saves just to deny Faris Al-Barrakan and Musab Al-Juwayr.
So it really proved the mechanism can work against elite physical opposition.
Absolutely did.
But, I mean, This kind of system requires incredibly specific personnel.
Oh, completely.
Just think about being a forward in this system. You are asked to spend 85 minutes of the match trapped in your own half, maintaining shape, shuffling side to side like a metronome, while a team like Spain passes the ball 800 times around you.
It sounds exhausting.
Right. And then the millisecond your team wins the ball, you're expected to sprint 60 yards at top speed. The system is only as good as the weapons executing it. So let's look at the Green Falcons' arsenal. Who does Donis actually trust to pull this off?
Well, when analyzing the squad Donis has assembled, you immediately see an undeniable strength. Immense cohesion. Roughly 90% of this 26-man roster plays domestically in the Saudi Pro League. We are talking about heavy, concentrated blocks of players from Al Hilal, Al Ahly, and Al Nassr.
So they all know each other.
Exactly. Because they train against each other or with each other every single day, there is an automated chemistry. They understand each other's spatial tendencies, their running angles, their preferred timing for receiving a pass.
Which is huge for a defensive block.
It is. In a complex mass defensive system where one player stepping half a yard out of line breaks the entire offside trap, that inherent cohesion is a massive advantage over national teams whose players converge from 15 different European leagues just days before a tournament.
But the flip side of that domestic concentration leads to some glaring weaknesses, too.
Yeah.
The first one popping off the scouting reports is their vulnerability in the air.
Yeah, the physical profile of the defensive spine is a genuine critical concern. Their primary center backs, Abdullah Al-Amri and Hassan Tambakti, stand at 1.85 meters and 1.82 meters, respectively.
It isn't tiny, but...
In the context of elite international football, neither is exceptionally tall, nor do their trekking metrics show dominance in vertical leap or aerial duels.
Right.
And here's why that matters. When you play a low defensive block and funnel teams out wide, you are actively inviting the opposition to cross the ball into your penalty area.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if your center backs struggle to win headers, you are highly vulnerable to set pieces and headed goals from crosses.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the second major vulnerability isn't just physical, it's structural and economic. We need to explore what the analysts are calling the PIF paradox.
This is perhaps the most unique geopolitical and sporting challenge facing any team at this World Cup.
Let's get into it.
So, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the PIF, has injected unprecedented financial capital into the domestic league. They have brought in a tidal wave of foreign superstars: Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, Alexander Mitrovic, Riyad Mahrez, and N'Golo Kante.
All huge names.
Massive. And while this has undeniably raised the global broadcasting profile and the overall technical standard of the league, it has created a severe, crippling bottleneck for domestic Saudi talent.
Right. Let's quantify this for the listener, because the numbers are just staggering. Firas Al-Baraikan is the starting striker for the Saudi national team. In 2023, before the massive influx, he played roughly 2,500 minutes for his club.
A very solid season.
But then, the year Karim Benzema and Roberto Firmino arrived in the league, Al-Baraikan's playing time plummeted to just 400 minutes.
It's devastating for a player.
I mean, Donis is taking a primary striker to the World Cup, who has spent 85% of his calendar year sitting on the bench in a tracksuit.
That is the absolute crux of the paradox. The league is richer and better than ever, but the local players are starved for crucial high-stakes minutes.
Right.
And this lack of playing time is particularly acute for strikers and goalkeepers, which are positions heavily dominated by foreign imports.
Because everyone wants to buy a star striker.
Exactly. When these Saudi players report for national team duty, they are suffering from a dangerous lack of match sharpness. You can run all the drills you want, but you cannot simulate the intensity, the spatial awareness, and the split-second decision-making required in a competitive league match during a training session.
Yeah, practice just isn't the real thing.
No, it's not. Donis is relying on players who are physically rested, but competitively rusty.
So let's profile the specific faces Donis is relying on to execute this bunker and break system. We have to start with the talisman, Salem Al-Dawsari.
Absolutely. Al-Dawsari is the undisputed icon of this generation.
He really is.
At 34 years old, this is almost certainly his final World Cup appearance. He is a highly experienced left winger who possesses that rare, intangible ability to completely alter the momentum of a game with a single moment of individual brilliance.
Like we saw against Argentina.
Exactly. Tactically, he is best known for starting wide on the left touchline, receiving the ball, and aggressively cutting inside onto his favored right foot to unleash curling shots from the edge of the penalty area, exactly the mechanism he used to score against Argentina.
Right.
Even within a rigid defensive system, he acts as the psychological anchor for the team. If there is a moment of magic to be found to break a deadlock, the attacking data suggests it will absolutely flow through him.
And then we have Fierce Albarracin, the 26-year-old primary striker we just mentioned. I mean, his role in this new 5-4-1 system sounds physically agonizing.
It is arguably the most grueling role on the pitch. In a 5-4-1 low block, the lone striker is the most isolated man in the stadium.
Just totally alone up there.
Exactly. Albarracin isn't primarily tasked with scoring goals. He is the physical anchor for the entire transition strategy.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, when the Saudi defense eventually clears the ball under heavy pressure, Albarracin has to drop deep toward the midfield line. He often has two massive physical opponent center backs draped all over his back.
Sounds brutal.
It is. His job is to receive that clearance, hold the ball up using sheer physical strength, win fouls, and buy just enough time for his midfielders to sprint out of their deep defensive shell to support him.
Ah, so he's the pressure release valve.
Yes. He has to relieve the pressure. And then he still somehow has to have the aerobic capacity to sprint into the penalty box to finish any potential chances.
Unbelievable.
It is a thankless, exhausting task, made even harder by his lack of domestic club minutes.
Now, the player tasked with actually getting the ball to Albarracin is Musab Al-Juwayr. He's only 22, but the scouting reports suggest he is the absolute key to making this whole transition mechanism tick.
Yeah, Al-Juwayr is the crown jewel of the new generation. He had a breakout season domestically, providing 13 assists across all competitions.
That's a great return.
It is. He acts as the playmaking hub, operating centrally in the midfield. What makes him special, and why Donis trusts him so implicitly, is his elite press resistance.
What does that look like on the pitch?
Well, when he is surrounded by 2 or 3 pressing opponents, he doesn't panic. He uses subtle body feints to create space. Furthermore, his passing range is just exceptional.
Right, for those long diagonals.
Exactly. When Saudi Arabia wins the ball back deep in their own half, Al-Juwayr is the designated target. He receives the ball, instantly gets his head up, scanning the field, and launches those highly precise 40-yard diagonal passes over the top to the wingers to spark the counterattack.
So the entire speed of their transition depends heavily on his vision.
Absolutely.
And finally, a player who completely breaks the domestic concentration mold, Saud Abdulhamid.
Yes, the 26-year-old right back. He is a fascinating outlier because he is the only foreign-based player in this entire 26-man squad.
Only one.
The only one. The technical reports highlight his extensive experience in Europe, mentioning his developmental time with Lens in France and his historic move to AS Roma in Italy's Serie A.
That's massive exposure.
It is, and that European exposure has really honed his tactical discipline. Tracking data from Roma shows Abdulhamid routinely covers an average of 11.2 kilometers a match, with a highly disproportionate amount of that distance consisting of high-intensity sprints.
Wow, so he's just got an unbelievable engine.
Exactly. In Donis's system, Abdulhamid functions as an athletic catalyst. Defensively, he has the recovery velocity to track back and shut down elite wingers. But offensively, he is expected to make incredibly demanding overlapping sprints down the right flank to join the counterattacks.
He essentially has to cover the entire right side of the pitch single-handedly for 90 minutes.
Literally.
Okay, so we have the bunker and break system fully decoded. We've got the talisman in Al-Dawsari, the playmaking hub in Al-Juwayr, the isolated workhorse in Albarracin, and the European engine in Abdulhamid.
Right, the key pieces.
Now we have to look at the absolute gauntlet they're walking into. Let's look at the teams attempting to dismantle that heavily armored bus in Group H. 3 teams, 3 completely different stylistic puzzles for Donis to solve.
It's a fascinating group.
Let's start with match day 1. June 15th, Miami Stadium. The South American powerhouse, Uruguay.
This matchup is a brutal physical and tactical baptism for Donis's new system. Uruguay is managed by Marcelo Bielsa.
A legend.
Oh, a legendary tactician. He's famous for his incredibly high-intensity vertical pressing style. His teams play what is often described as murder ball.
Murder ball.
Yeah, they deploy a strict man-to-man pressing system all over the pitch. They do not let you breathe. Uruguay's midfield engine is driven by Real Madrid's Federico Valverde, who brings limitless energy and long-range shooting power.
Of course.
And their attack features Liverpool's Darwin Núñez, a player who embodies pure chaos, direct running, and immense physical dominance.
It's basically a test of whether the Saudi shield can withstand a constant barrage of sledgehammers in the Miami humidity.
Exactly. Uruguay will try to suffocate Saudi Arabia high up the pitch, forcing turnovers near the Saudi penalty area. But more concerningly, if we recall our analysis of Saudi Arabia's defensive weaknesses, their lack of height, Uruguay possesses elite physicality and set-piece delivery.
Oh, right. The aerial vulnerability.
Yeah. Valverde's delivery into the box from corner kicks, aimed at powering center backs like Ronald Araujo or Jose Maria Gimenez, will brutally expose the aerial vulnerabilities of Al-Amri and Tambakti.
Because Tambakti is 1.82 meters tall, and Darwin Núñez is an absolute monster in the air.
Exactly. The entire game will be an exercise in surviving dead ball situations and hoping Bielsa's notoriously aggressive fullbacks leave huge pockets of space for Al-Dawsari to exploit on the counterattack.
Assuming they survive Miami, they move to match day 2, June 21st, inside the indoor stadium in Atlanta. They face the heavy favorites of Group H, and frankly, one of the favorites to win the entire tournament, Spain.
Yeah, if Uruguay is a physical test, Spain is a test of supreme mental concentration and psychological endurance.
Right.
Spain, under manager Luis de la Fuente, has tweaked their traditional tiki-taka style to be slightly more direct, but they still rely on absolute possession dominance. They utilize players like Pedri in central midfield to act as a metronome, dictating the tempo of the game.
Just passing it endlessly.
Yep. And the incredible teenage sensation Lamine Yamal on the wing to provide width and elite dribbling ability. Against a low block, Spain will routinely hold 70 to 75% possession.
So the Saudi players are essentially going to be chasing the ball side to side for 2 straight hours without ever really touching it.
It is mentally exhausting. Spain will force Saudi Arabia into an extreme, suffocating low block. The Spanish players will camp out right on the edge of zone 14, moving the ball quickly side to side, probing, waiting for just one Saudi defender to lose concentration.
Just waiting for a single mistake.
Exactly. They are waiting for someone to get tired, to step out of the defensive line by half a yard. The second that gap opens, Pedri or Fabian Ruiz will slip a pinpoint pass through it.
Wow.
Saudi Arabia will likely only see the ball a handful of times in dangerous areas throughout the entire 90 minutes. Their defensive discipline has to be flawless. One lapse in concentration against a Spanish passing carousel, and the geometry breaks down, leading to a goal.
Okay, so Uruguay is a physical nightmare. Spain is a possession nightmare. Then we arrive at match day 3, June 26th, Houston. They play Cape Verde.
Ah, Cape Verde.
Now, on paper, looking at historical pedigrees, they are the debutantes, the island nation of roughly 500,000 people. This is supposed to be the easy game, the guaranteed points.
It's supposed to be.
But wait a minute, I'm looking at Cape Verde's tactical profile here. If Saudi Arabia's entire identity under Donis is sitting back in a bunker and counterattacking, what happens against Cape Verde, who, according to these reports, also want to sit back in a compact 4-2-3-1 and counterattack using the speed of their captain, Ryan Mendes?
Yes.
Doesn't that force Saudi Arabia to step up and dominate possession, the very thing the data says they are terrible at?
This raises a critical point, and it perfectly highlights the fascinating tactical chess match of a World Cup group stage. You have correctly identified the structural flaw in the schedule.
Right.
Mathematically, Cape Verde is undeniably the most winnable game for Saudi Arabia, but stylistically it is by far the most awkward and dangerous matchup.
It's like 2 counterpunchers standing in the middle of a boxing ring, gloves up, just staring at each other, waiting for the other guy to throw the first punch so they can react.
That is the perfect analogy. Cape Verde is highly organized under their coach, Bubista. They are entirely comfortable not having the ball.
So Saudi Arabia has to take the initiative.
Exactly. So Saudi Arabia will suddenly be thrust into the uncomfortable role of the protagonist. They will suddenly find themselves with 60% possession, and they will be tasked with breaking down a set defense.
Which they couldn't even do against Jordan or Indonesia.
Exactly. Donis's primary strategy of having Al-Juwayr play long balls into empty space won't work because Cape Verde's defensive line will be so deep there won't be any empty space behind them.
Wow.
It will become a slow, cagey, frustrating match. This is the precise scenario where tactical systems completely cancel each other out, and the game demands individual magic to find a breakthrough.
Like someone just has to pull a rabbit out of a hat.
This is where Salem Al-Dawsari will be required to beat 2 men off the dribble, or Al-Juwayr will have to hit a perfect strike from 25 yards out.
Which brings us to the cold, hard reality of the numbers. Because the rules of the tournament have changed since Qatar. It's a 48-team World Cup now. We're looking at 12 groups of 4. It's not just the top 2 who advance from the group stage anymore. How does this alter the math for survival?
The expansion drastically alters the group stage mathematics and the concept of risk management.
Okay, break it down for me.
Well, the top 2 teams from each of the 12 groups automatically advance to the knockout stages, but they are now joined by the 8 best third-place teams to form a new round of 32.
So third place can get you through.
Yes. Statistical modeling for this specific format shows that securing 4 points, which usually equates to 1 win and 1 draw, guarantees a 95% chance of advancing as one of those best third-place teams. Even securing 3 points gives you a fighting chance, depending heavily on your goal difference.
So applying that math to Group H, the strategic mission for Saudi Arabia is crystal clear. You absolutely must beat Cape Verde, no matter how ugly, boring, or awkward the tactical stalemate is, to secure those 3 points.
Correct.
And then you have to somehow execute your low block perfectly and steal a gritty, backs-to-the-wall 0-0 draw against either Uruguay or Spain to get that vital 4th point.
That is the exact mathematical blueprint for their survival.
Yeah.
But the global betting markets are highly skeptical that they have the personnel to execute it.
I'm sure they are.
Looking at the latest odds, Saudi Arabia are massive outsiders. They are priced at 1,001 to win the tournament, which is obviously expected. But even within the confines of Group H, they are listed at 591 just to win the group.
Wow, 591.
Yeah. Spain is the overwhelming 15 favorite, with Uruguay right behind them at 41. The market is clearly predicting Spain and Uruguay to completely dominate the points tally, leaving Saudi Arabia and Cape Verde to fight over the remaining scraps.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, if you were looking at this objectively, analyzing all the tactical models, the XG data, and the squad constraints we've discussed, what is the rational outlook?
Well, the most realistic data-driven position is to expect a group stage exit for Saudi Arabia.
Right.
The sheer quality and depth of Spain and Uruguay, combined with Saudi Arabia's lack of managerial preparation time, their quantifiable aerial vulnerabilities against players like Núñez, and the PIF paradox drastically affecting their strikers' match sharpness. It just makes advancing highly improbable.
It's an incredibly steep mountain to climb.
It is. However, from a value perspective in the betting markets, if you believe in Georgios Donis' ability to act as that structural engineer,
Right.
if you believe that the 0-0 draw against Senegal wasn't a statistical fluke, but a true reflection of a resilient, unbreakable low block, then taking a chance on Saudi Arabia qualifying for the round of 32 offers intriguing value.
Because they only need that one draw.
Exactly. If they can somehow frustrate Uruguay in the Miami Heat, congest Zone 14, and nick a set-piece goal on a rare counterattack, the entire complexion of the group changes. But the baseline expectation, grounded firmly in the numbers, is elimination.
It is just an incredible narrative arc. I mean, to summarize everything we've unpacked today, we are looking at a team that was forged in absolute qualification chaos. They fired the charismatic architect of their greatest modern victory just 50 days before the tournament.
Unbelievable timing.
They've handed the keys to a domestic league crisis contractor who completely ripped up the playbook and installed a brand new defensive bunker identity overnight. They're actively battling the bizarre reality where their own domestic league has become too wealthy, leaving their national team strikers sitting on the bench all season, losing their match sharpness.
The PIF paradox.
Exactly. And now they face a grueling schedule against Bielsa's high-pressing Uruguayan machine, De La Fuente's possession-obsessed Spanish Armada, and a stubborn Cape Verdean underdog that refuses to play into their hands.
Yeah, and if we pull back and connect all of these tactical and administrative threads to the bigger geopolitical picture, there is a fascinating subplot to this entire 2026 campaign.
Oh, right.
Saudi Arabia is officially slated to host the 2034 World Cup. That is a monumental, transformational event for the nation, and the pressure to perform well on home soil to field a highly competitive team in front of the world will be immense.
8 years from now, that feels like a lifetime. But in terms of international football development, that's practically tomorrow.
Exactly. The players who are currently 16 or 17 years old in the Saudi academies right now will be in their prime for that home tournament. And that leaves us with a lingering, provocative question to consider.
What's that?
Given the sudden panicked coaching changes, the extreme tactical pragmatism of the low block, and the glaring systemic issues with domestic player development caused by the influx of foreign stars, Is this 2026 campaign really about winning matches right now?
Oh, well.
Or is this North American World Cup merely a desperate, high-stakes laboratory experiment? Are the Federation using this tournament to figure out, in real time under intense pressure, how to actually develop a sustainable pipeline of domestic talent that isn't completely overshadowed by imported superstars before the eyes of the entire world arrive on their own doorstep in 8 years?
Yeah, it is a deeply fascinating thought to end on. Because the clock to 2034 is already ticking, and the football world is watching how they manage this paradox. So, to you listening, when Group H kicks off in Miami, look past the surface level. Keep a very close eye on the geometry of Donis's low block. Watch how tightly they congest that central zone 14 against those South American heavyweights.
Yeah, look for the tactics.
Right. Watch for Musab Al-Juwayr receiving the ball under pressure and loading up those 40-yard diagonal passes to spark the transition. See if you can spot the mechanics of this high-stakes lab experiment unfolding in real time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Green Falcons. We will catch you next time.